In 1968, zombies first stumbled into the public's nightmares with the release of the film Night of the Living Dead. It's hard to believe, but this iconic monster found all throughout our media is actually younger than Will Smith.
This definitely rates about a 9.0 on my weird shit-o-meter.
Before this film, the term zombie referred to the Haitian folklore of an animated corpse, brought back to life as a mindless slave to serve a voodoo practitioner. At first, George Romero, the film's director and co-writer, referred to his creations as ghouls. These creatures hungered for human flesh, had no master, and could spread their affliction. They were a plague. Romero's monsters drew more inspiration from the vampires in Richard Matheson's novel I Am Legend than from the traditional Haitian myth. It wasn't until film critics dubbed them zombies that the public embraced this connection.
I never thought of them as zombies initially. I didn't call them zombies in the first film because I didn't think of them as zombies. I thought zombies were those voodoo guys, the guys that were doing the wet work for Lugosi, and slaves, basically, Caribbean style. And so I didn't use the word zombie ever. And it was only when people started to write about it that they called them zombies. I think Cahiers du Cinema was the first magazine to call them zombies. And I said, oh, well, okay, maybe. Maybe they are. But I never thought of them that way.
Over time, Romero's interpretation would eclipse the original term entirely, redefining what we now consider a zombie. While Romero introduced key concepts of the zombie genre, these undead creatures ironically developed a life of their own and evolved into the diverse forms we recognize today. Noticeably, while Romero's zombies were slow due to rigor mortis and decay, we've witnessed the emergence of faster, more aggressive zombies in films like World War Z. This evolution raises a crucial question. Which is deadlier, the traditional slow-moving zombies or their faster, modern counterparts? And here's another thought. In what type of zombie apocalypse would you prefer to find yourself, hoping for the best chance of survival? This video will explore which kind of zombie is the deadliest, and may even offer some survival tips along the way. Let's dive in. But before we go into my work, which to my knowledge is the most in-depth scientific exploration of a zombie outbreak yet, let's get into the surprisingly lively field of zombie infection modeling. The overlap between researchers and nerds is overwhelming, so many researchers have sought to apply their training in science to understand this horror fantasy. The most prominent paper that kickstarted this academic subgenre was published in 2009 by Munz et al. They modified the SRI model, a fundamental tool in epidemiology that illustrates how infectious outbreaks progress. The SRI model is a compartmental model that divides the entire population into three distinct groups: susceptible, infected, and removed. The infected group represents individuals currently carrying the infection. The susceptible group includes those who are at risk of infection, while the removed group consists of people who are no longer part of the infection model, either because they have recovered and developed immunity, or because they have succumbed to the illness and died. In either case, they're both removed from the active infection pool. This model demonstrates how these populations change over time and interact within the overall arching population. The equations might look intimidating, but let's decode them together. The derivatives in these equations represent the change in these populations over a specific time period, often rewritten to reflect the daily changes. Starting with the susceptible population equation, there are three terms to consider. The term pi is the only positive value, referring to new individuals added to the population through birth. However, since most epidemics spread much faster than the 9 months it takes for a human to be born, this term is typically set to 0 and ignored. The middle term represents the newly infected individuals who transition from the susceptible to the infected group. The rate of these new infections is proportional to both the number of infected and susceptible individuals multiplied by beta, which indicates the transmission rate of the disease. A higher beta means a more contagious virus. The final term accounts for deaths from causes unrelated to the virus, represented by delta, which is the percentage chance of people dying from other means, such as car accidents or cancer. This number is also added to the removed population, as the deceased cannot become infected. However, this doesn't work in reverse. Having a cold doesn't prevent someone from getting into a car accident, meaning some members of the infected population will also be lost this way. The remaining infected population can either succumb to the illness or recover and gain immunity, both of which puts them in the removed population as well. It's worth noting that these deaths from accidents are generally insignificant over the time frame of most diseases, and are often ignored. Ultimately, this results in a powerful set of equations that model the health status of an entire population. There are two key takeaways. First, the sum of all the changes is 0. This makes sense since without the new individuals entering the population, all that happens is a shift from one group to another. Second, the change in the susceptible group will always be negative. while the change in the removed group will always be positive. If we examine an example of this model, we can see the eventual fate of the majority of the population, which typically ends in the removed compartment. While this outcome is often inevitable, we can mitigate the duration of the outbreak and reduce the peak infected population through measures like social distancing, something we all experienced during the flatten the curve movement during COVID. In a typical disease progression, the flow moves from susceptible to infected to removed, with no backward transitions. Once recovered, individuals cannot be reinfected, and the deceased cannot return to life. However, that's not the case for zombies, a disease where recovery isn't an option and the dead do come back. This is how Munz and his co-authors zombified the SRI model to predict a zombie outbreak. Their SZR model looks like this, with the first equation dictating the susceptible population, humans, being identical to the normal SRI model, albeit for the I for infected switched out for the Z for zombie. Once again, we can translate the math to English as we explore the real changes found in the other two equations. The middle term in our zombie equation represents the only way to eliminate zombies. It indicates how many zombies are killed by removing their heads or destroying their brains. This is proportional to the size of both the human and zombie populations, and is affected by the parameter alpha, which corresponds to the successful kill rate per interaction. The final term shows the only way for someone to leave the removed class. It accounts for the portion of the dead that come back to life as zombies. I like to think they chose the parameter zeta for zombies, but that's just my headcanon. In the end, you get a flowchart that looks quite different from the normal SRI model, allowing for an endless cycle between the removed and zombie populations. When these equations were applied to a population of 500,000 with an initially small number of zombies, Munz and his co-authors found it only took about 4 days for all humans to be wiped out. However, these equations heavily favored the zombies, as in this model, humans directly turned into zombies after an attack. In most movies, a zombie bite doesn't immediately kill and turn a person. There is usually a latency period. To make the model more quote-unquote realistic, the authors added a new compartment population of infected individuals who would turn into zombies after 24 hours, provided they weren't killed before then. This latency period offered people an extra 3 days of survival, but humanity's downfall still came just after 1 week. To help us survive a zombie apocalypse, the authors introduced various interventions to stop the spread. The first tactic they tried was quarantining the infected and zombies, a standard method in containing contagious diseases. However, this approach only delayed the inevitable by 1 day. One of the co-authors, Robert Smith, explained in a later publication to the Canadian Medical Association Journal, the infection was so virulent that even leaving a few zombies in the wild would result in a restart of the outbreak. Including quarantine thus made no difference to the stability of the doomsday equation. That was a bit of a downer, to be honest. A downer indeed, but they didn't give up and instead tried a new approach. In this scenario, what if there was already a cure available before the outbreak began? One that could turn a zombie back into a living human? You might say this is unrealistic, but hey, it's a zombie apocalypse. Take it with a grain of salt. Importantly, in this model, we actually have a way to restore the human population, enabling an equilibrium to be found. After about a week, instead of humans entirely being wiped out, we would stabilize at levels of about 5% of our initial population. Smith noted, with a cure, human and zombies could coexist, but unless the cure was 100% effective, humans would only survive in small numbers, most likely in shopping malls, abandoned farmhouses, or the Winchester pub. While this is definitely an improvement, I wouldn't call having 95% of the population killed and zombies still roaming the earth a happy ending. So they tried one last time. The final intervention they proposed was that every 2.5 days, there would be a large-scale coordinated attack on the zombie population by the surviving humans.
Let's do this. Leroy Jenkins!
Importantly, each attack would need to be more powerful than the last. Essentially, the strategy was to kill them before they kill us. With this plan in mind, humanity could finally survive the zombie outbreak, and the new world could be zombie-free in just 10 days. Ultimately, Munz's work could be summarized as neither quarantine nor a cure were viable options, and would only delay the inevitable by a few days. The best option remains arming oneself to the teeth, hitting the zombies hard, and then hitting them harder the next time. In a rare moment, both movies and science actually agreed on the best course of action. Since its publication, this paper has been cited hundreds of times. This is partly because it is, perhaps unsurprisingly, the first mathematical analysis of an outbreak of a zombie infection. But it's also because their work does have real-world implications. While the dead coming back to life is a, quote, unlikely scenario if taken literally, there is power in modeling situations where the previously removed class can come back into play. They mention uses for more realistic disasters, such as diseases with dormant infections or politics. Just last year, a paper was published using a susceptible cleric zombie recovered model, in which spontaneous recovery is absent, but zombies can recover with some probability via interaction with a cleric. This was a way to model certain real-world diseases such as HIV, where spontaneous recovery is impossible, but where medical interventions by a limited number of caregivers can reduce or eliminate the spread of infection. Beyond these practical benefits, zombie modeling serves as a fantastic educational tool. It provides a way to teach public health professionals, students, and the general public in a familiar, approachable, flexible manner. You watching this is proof of that concept. You are tricked into learning about epidemiology and mathematical modeling through the lens of a zombie infestation. It's easy to see why this paper has been so influential, inspiring others to continue using SRI modeling to describe these zombie outbreaks. But Munz's paper isn't without its flaws. For starters, all the members of the removed dead are equally likely to be revived as a zombie, even if they died from non-zombie related causes or are previously killed zombies with their brains destroyed. However, the most significant issue with Munz's model, and the SIR model in general, is the lack of spatial dimensions. The equation assumes that you are equally likely to encounter a zombie at any location, and that the populations of humans and zombies are always evenly mixed. This isn't true, especially at the onset of an outbreak, where we'd expect the horde to be concentrated in specific locations, like cemeteries or hospitals. This point was emphasized by Dr. Woolley, who created a zombie model that took spatial dynamics into account. With space to navigate, he had to decide not only how zombies would move, but also how fast they would do so, making this the first model to consider zombie speed as a variable. Woolley determined that the movement of zombies would be fundamentally random, reflecting their mindless nature. This random notion, where no particular direction is favored, is known as a random walk. While every professor I've had taught it as the motion of a drunk man trying not to fall, it's incredibly important and is the underlying principle of diffusion. You've seen it in action when a drop of dye spreads in a glass of water. As Woolley notes, diffusion is a universal process, governing phenomena like heat conduction through solids, gases spreading out in the room, just to name a few applications. In his model, zombies would start from an initial concentration and then spread out through this random walk diffusion process. He also had his human population move in a random walk as well. As Dr. Woolley puts it,
humans are panicking, they're moving randomly, not many people have a zombie plan. They're fools.
You can watch Woolley hilariously explain his work in a Numberphile video, which I will link in the description below. Ultimately though, Woolley ends up with an equation that predicts how fast the zombie outbreak will spread. This v, or the speed of the outbreak, is proportional to the square root of the speed of the zombies, the number of humans there is to infect, and the rate at which zombies multiply, specifically how many they infect minus how many are killed. If you want to slow the spread of the zombie infection, you could kill the zombies faster than they infect others, effectively lowering this value. You could also slow the zombies down by targeting their legs or building barricades. Finally, you could also lower the number of humans around by isolating yourself, or in whatever other way you seem fit.
But if you're surrounded by humans, all they are to you are potential infections. I'm not saying you should get rid of those humans. I'm just saying what the math says, Brady.
Dr. Woolley's work used in this project would actually go on to help the Welsh government minimize COVID's spread in classrooms. However, when it comes to zombies, Woolley is dead wrong. His formula suggests the faster the zombies move, the quicker the outbreak spreads. But this is false, and I can prove it. Before I do though, let me explain why I believe this in the first place. Let's clarify a few terms. Deadly means likely to cause death, while lethal refers to something capable of causing death. An anecdote that really highlights this difference is that vending machines are statistically more deadly than sharks. On average, vending machines kill about 2 people a year from accidents, compared to sharks, which only kill 1.
But you know what I'd do if there was a shark or you get electrocuted? I'll take electrocution every single time.
So, vending machines are technically twice as deadly as sharks. However, I think everyone would agree that sharks are more lethal. After all, they are predators and those teeth aren't just for show. There's a reason divers who expect to see sharks use cages or protective gear, but I don't put on armor to buy a soda. The higher kill count of vending machines is simply due to the sheer number of interactions we have with them compared to sharks, creating more opportunities for accidents. So, while the fastest zombies are the most lethal, because they're harder to escape or fight, the deadliest type of zombie is the one that wipes out humanity the quickest and kills more people over time. A more relevant example might be rabies, which has a fatality rate of nearly 100%, killing 118,000 people over 2 years. In contrast, COVID-19, with a fatality rate of about 1.4%, killed 15 million people in the same time frame. This is because COVID is significantly more infectious, and a virus with a lower fatality rate can kill more people if it's highly transmissible. This isn't an accident. In fact, it's in a virus's best interest to not kill you at all.
You seem a decent fellow. I hate to kill you.
A virus has 2 main goals: to reproduce and to infect others. If it kills its host too fast or makes them too sick to interact with others, it can't spread effectively. The severity of symptoms or the damage a virus inflicts on its hosts is referred to as virulence. For nearly a century, there was a belief that viruses would continuously evolve to be less virulent, allowing the host to survive longer and spread the virus more effectively. This notion was called the law of declining virulence, but it's not a law at all. Even Wikipedia describes it as, at most, an educated guess. Ouch. This comforting myth was often repeated in the media during the COVID pandemic, with claims that the next strain would definitely be less lethal. However, this hypothesis has been debunked for decades. The truth is that the reproduction of a virus is inherently damaging to the host's body. To replicate, a virus must hijack and destroy cells. Therefore, the replication process is directly correlated to the damage it causes, or its virulence. A virus wants to replicate, be virulent, and transmit to others, which are opposing goals. It ends up balancing between the two to optimize its chances of survival. This is known as the virulence transmission trade-off, a cornerstone of evolutionary pathology. This concept helps explain how diseases like malaria or cholera, which don't rely on direct host-to-host transmission, can be so severe, while typical respiratory viruses like the common cold or flu tend to be relatively benign. It's this hypothesis that ultimately explains why the fastest zombies are not necessarily the deadliest. What Woolley's equation overlooked is that not all zombies are created equal. In his model, he accounted for only 3 possible interactions when a zombie and human meet. First, the human kills the zombie. Second, the zombie kills the human without turning them. Third, the zombie converts the human into another zombie. However, there are 2 ways this conversion can occur. You could be killed in the attack and, more than likely, eaten a bit before rising as a zombie. But as a damaged corpse, this kind of zombie wouldn't be particularly effective at attacking and converting others. Alternatively, you could survive the attack after being bitten, effectively becoming a 100% healthy zombie, which would be in a better position to infect others. The critical factor that determines whether you get killed outright or escape merely bitten is the speed of the zombies. They need to be fast enough to survive and attack effectively, but slow enough to minimize the damage to their future hosts, enabling efficient transmission of the infection. We arrive at our own zombified version of the virulence transmission trade-off. So, how fast is the deadliest zombie? It's time we found out. Unlike the previous authors we've discussed, I'm not a mathematician. However, a large part of my job involves ignoring my computer's cries for help as it runs code, so I was more than willing to engage in something computationally intensive for the sake of accuracy, rather than relying solely on the general equations. I created a simulation that tracked the spread of zombies through multiple phases, continuing until either of the zombies or the humans were annihilated. Each run begins with specific initial conditions. I set up a 100 by 100 grid, 10,000 squares, and place 5,000 people in a checkerboard pattern. The 50 individuals at the center become zombies, starting with just 1% of the population undead. This clustering reflects Woolley's idea of an initial infection localized to a graveyard or hospital. I also set parameters including how often the humans would fight the zombies, and the maximum speed the zombies could move relative to humans. For my simulation, zombies are defined as undead beings that actively try to eat the living, but do not attack other zombies. The curse or disease spreads through a bite. Even if a victim survives an attack, it is ultimately lethal and leads to zombification. Although the definition of zombie has changed a lot over the decades and will continue to evolve, I think these are the current core components. That also means that media with infected but living zombie-like humans are not true zombies. Examples of this include 28 Days Later or the Last of Us series. And while even the game's creator agrees with me there, I realize it isn't the most popular opinion, so I will do a special living zombie run at the end. Now that we have that out of the way, we can actually start the simulation. The first phase is movement. In a random order, each individual attempts to move to an open position. Humans, with a movement speed of 100%, will always move if possible. However, zombies move based on a set chance determined by their speed. For example, a zombie at 50% speed will only move with a 50% chance. Both zombies and humans move randomly. Zombies due to their mindlessness, and for humans it gets more complicated. Panic could make them irrational, as most people don't have a zombie plan, but also whether a person will charge to fight the zombies, run away, try to gather supplies, or search for loved ones. These motivations create drastically different behaviors, so behaving randomly is just the easiest way to include them all. At these new positions, the second phase begins and humans engage in combat. Going first is the privilege of having a fully functional brain. Each person, when confronted by a zombie, decides whether to attack based on a percentage chance I set. If they do attack, their chance of successfully killing the zombie with a headshot depends on their speed relative to the zombie's speed. For example, if the zombie moves as fast as the human, they only have a 50% chance to succeed. If the zombie is moving at half their speed, they have a 66% chance. Zombies killed this way are completely removed from the populations. After the humans act, it's the zombies' turn. They attack any nearby human, with their success chance calculated similarly. So a zombie at 100% human speed has a 50-50 chance for success, while a zombie at 50% speed is only successful 33% of the time. But just because they land a hit doesn't mean it is always lethal. A fast zombie has a higher chance of a kill, while a slower zombie may allow the human to escape with just a bite. On the off chance this ankle biter successfully attacks, it probably won't be immediately lethal. It should be noted for combat that both humans and zombies can only attack once per round, and if they are surrounded by multiple potential targets, they will randomly choose one. Next comes dinner time. If a zombie is near a recently killed human body, they will start to eat it. If there are multiple corpses, they will randomly choose one. So, how much can a person eat in one sitting? There's no better place to answer that than the competitive world of hot dog eating. When I made the code, the current record was 76 hot dogs and buns in 10 minutes, set by Joey Chestnut in 2021. However, he recently broke that this September with 83 hot dogs. An absolute legend. Regardless, the 76 hot dogs came out to about 16 pounds, which is about 12% of the average human's body weight. So a zombie at 100% human speed could eat 16 pounds, and a zombie at 50% would only eat 8. This could be because after 10 minutes of being dead, the zombies lose interest, or because the corpse already revived. Which brings us to our final phase, new zombies. Infected humans become zombies, with their speeds adjusted to match the maximum zombie speed. The recently fed on corpses will also turn into zombies, but their speed will be equal to how much of their zombie is left, multiplied by the max zombie speed. So if the speed of the zombie is 50% of that of people, and half this body's body was eaten, their speed will be set to 25%. After this, we start everything over again by going back to the movement phase, and we repeat until all humans or zombies are killed. I ran these simulations for over 3 weeks, changing all kinds of variables and scenarios. So let's finally see the results. Let's start with something simple, and graph the human population when they fight back with a 0% chance, and when the zombies are just as fast as humans. It obviously doesn't go too well for the humans. But the question is, what will change if I make the zombies slower? So let's set the zombie speed to 80% and see what happens. Remarkably, even though the zombies are slower, they wipe out humans faster. To determine the deadliest zombie speed, I could continue plotting like this, but it would quickly become a mess, so instead let's just focus on 2 points of this graph. The first is when the human population falls below 2,500. This is when half the population has been killed. Next, we will measure how long it takes until they are completely annihilated. The average time to reduce the population in half depending on the zombie speed looks like this. What's really interesting is that this simulated data can almost perfectly fit into a quadratic polynomial. Now, I only sampled speed in increments of 2.5% and averaged 20 trials per speed, so there are some fluctuations in the data. But by using a best fit equation, we can more accurately estimate the deadliest zombies. From now on, I will just plot the best fit line. By using it, we can determine that when humans don't fight back, the deadliest type of zombie is the one that moves at about 76% of a normal human speed. By moving 25% slower, the zombie outbreak manages to kill 3% faster. But what might even be crazier is that the zombies moving at half the speed of humans are just as deadly as zombies capable of full sprinting. All these numbers are only confirmed by looking at the time it takes for complete annihilation. Keep in mind, this scenario represents the best case for zombies, since humans are not fighting back. Now, let's adjust the simulations and see what happens when humans fight back 5% of the time. Right away, we can observe that human resistance slows the rate of the destruction caused by zombies. But we can also see the deadliest type of zombie shifts to a speed of about 84%. This is because the slower zombies are easier to kill, so the creation of healthier zombies is traded off with increased survival. If we look at the speed where zombies are deadliest as a function of fighting chance, we see that after the initial shock of resistance, each time the fighting increases by 5%, the deadliest zombie needs to be 3% faster at least, in the case of killing off half the population. In general, the total annihilation speed is typically slightly slower, as having healthier zombies at the end can help find the remaining survivors more effectively. If humans fight back less than 40% of the time, the deadliest zombies are those moving slower than humans. Beyond this point, faster zombies become deadlier until human fighting rises to about 64%. At that point, humans can kill the zombies more quickly than they are killed, and humanity manages to survive. In general though, I don't think people would be fighting a zombie 2/3 of the time. 35% of the world's population is either children or elderly, so the remaining 65% would have to always try to kill every zombie they see. If they fight any less, humanity falls, and if they fight only 60% of the time, the deadliest zombies are once again the slower ones. But it is tough to predict a zombie apocalypse. In a way, zombies zombies are liquid, just like water or cats, in that their shape really depends on the environment. For example, if I run the exact same simulation but take away the space to run and pack everyone together, humanity dies out faster because they obviously can't escape. But what's shocking is the deadliest zombies are now the fastest ones. This can be explained because the slower zombies only have two advantages over the faster ones. They are more likely to infect than kill to create a healthier zombie, but they also move less, so they stay together in groups longer. The threat of zombies is never won by itself, but being overwhelmed by the horde. Faster zombies will spread apart faster, making them easier to pick off one by one. When we pack everyone in a closed area, the humans don't escape the slow zombies, as there is another zombie right there to finish the job if they survive the first time. So there goes that advantage. And since the fast zombies can't spread out in these situations, the slow zombies don't have that advantage either. Now, what if we delay the time it takes to turn the infected people into zombies? This doesn't really change anything for the fastest zombies, but the slower zombies are less effective, and we see the deadly zombie at around a speed of 86%. Now consider a scenario I call honor mode, where humans collectively choose to end their lives or allow themselves to be killed before they turn. Now, not everyone will tell the truth. Looking at COVID as a past example, around 20% of the population lied about having COVID in order to enter certain places. You might think it's ridiculous to compare the two, since one is significantly more serious, but at the same time I think it's far easier to lie when the outcome is your death. So, if about 80% of those infected kill themselves before turning, the zombie outbreak in all cases takes longer to spread, and the deadly zombie is once again the fastest. Finally, let's discuss living zombies. This scenario is the best case for humanity, since living infected individuals are less effective at spreading the infection. Unlike undead zombies, whose successful attacks always result in another zombie, living infected must leave their victims alive. In this case, living zombies are deadliest at a movement speed of about 30%, and they take significantly longer to spread overall. And since this is more likely a virus, humanity can use that time to develop a cure. If it's the literal dead coming back to life, we don't really have a solution for that. In the end, we actually see that despite being counterintuitive, the deadliest kind of zombie is the slower variety, rather than the fast sprinters. While many of these scenarios may lead to humanity's downfall, there are still strategies for survival. As concluded in the initial paper, the best way is to arm yourself to the teeth and hit them hard. If that's not feasible, following Woolley's advice to run away is wise. Not only will the zombies take longer to get to you, but they will disperse more as time goes on and will be easier to fight in those smaller numbers. This video also serves as a great example of using zombies to teach and model infectious diseases. Similar to previous works where zombieism symbolizes real-world pathogens, we inadvertently achieve the same goal here, but for modeling the virulence transmission trade-off. It's incredibly difficult to find empirical evidence of it in the real world due to the complexities and seemingly limitless variables that govern it. I hope you liked the video. This was definitely the most work I've ever put into the channel, so if you enjoyed it, make sure to like and subscribe. And let me know what you thought of it in the comments below. If you really want to help me out and simulate another kind of viral phenomenon, send this video to your friends who love horror and science. I'll see you in the next one.